Hey everyone, welcome back to the Camino Cafe podcast. I'm Leigh and your host. Dominique Powell from Casa Banderas asked me recently, hey Leigh, what's your one Camino word? And I answered her pretty quickly with the word connection. I explained connection to nature, connection to yourself, connection to your spiritual or religious or whatever you consider your bigger source, and of course, connection to people. I think the Camino gives us such an opportunity to connect. We often hear of pilgrim families developing. If you haven't walked yet, don't worry. You will make connections if you are open to it. And I know from experience and from all the interviews I've done so far, the very pilgrims that you need to meet and the ones that need to meet you, they will undoubtedly cross your path. Your pilgrim family may not happen the way you expect. It doesn't mean you will necessarily walk in a big pack. And you know what? There's nothing wrong if your family takes a while to build. It could end up being a small family or a large one. Your strongest connections may very well happen even after you complete your Camino walk. I encourage you to let go of expectations of getting a pilgrim family or when or how it will happen. And just trust that the Camino will work its magic for you and you will meet the people that you do need to meet. For me, some of my strongest connections happened both on and then later off the path, during and after my Caminos. In fact, the Camino Cafe podcast grew organically after my first Camino and during lockdown. It started, as Zoom get-togethers with a small Facebook group of Camino enthusiasts who just wanted to connect and chit-chat about our Caminos. Luckily, one of the unexpected gifts I have received while doing this podcast is the connection, the support, and the friendship I've developed after I walked. For example, the connections I have with fellow podcasters like today's guest, Kevin Donahue, and then all the other pilgrims out there that are doing such great Camino podcasts like Dan Mullins, Bradley Chermside, and Guillermo Ribeiro. I am so humbled to be a part of this little Camino family of podcasters. They so inspire me. And I've never felt a second of competition from these guys. In fact, only support. We often share suggestions for interviews, and we've even interviewed one another. Soon I will be interviewing Pilgrim Nancy Reynolds, and she just started a great new Camino podcast called You on the Camino de Santiago. It's a really good source of information for first-time pilgrims. Stay tuned for that interview, which will be coming up later this season. So let's get to today's guest. Kevin is the host of Sacred Steps podcast, so you probably already have heard him on one of those podcasts. He's a US-based pilgrim living in Florida. He's also an author and a veteran pilgrim who has walked numerous pilgrimages around the world. I was so happy to connect with him for this interview. We had so much to talk about. I loved getting to know him better, and I think this interview is full of tips and inspiration that will help you walk your very first Camino or your next one. Camino geeks like me will love his stories about walking. Hey, after the interview, check out the podcast bonus content on our Camino Cafe podcast YouTube channel. There, Kevin and I played 20 Camino questions, so you'll see that. It's really fun. And then also I'll post the behind the scenes video footage of this interview. It's always fun to me to be able to see folks that I hear on a podcast. I always like to kind of find their photo and see them in person on video. Okay, well, you know what? It's time to pull up a chair or take a drive or take a walk, however you listen to the Camino Cafe. But join me at the Camino Cafe table now, and we connect with Kevin Donahue. Thanks for joining us. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Camino Cafe. I'm coming to you from Santiago, and the city is alive. There are so many people in the city, from tourists to, of course, pilgrims. And I am hoping that it will be you someday soon. And I am so excited because today, finally, Kevin Donahue and I are sitting together, finally doing an interview that I think, Kevin, how long have we been trying to do this?
Finally, Leigh, I think we've been talking for 6 months or more that we said we've got to do a podcast together. And I'm so grateful that you stuck with it and that we've got our timing figured out. So buen camino. Great to talk to you.
Camino, yes, me too. I mean, we just had a variety of reasons. And I just started laughing the last times. I'm like, to think that we both have our own podcast, but it's been nearly impossible to schedule each other, but we stuck
Right.
in there. And here we are. And I've been watching your show grow as I've been doing my thing. And it's just a pleasure to have you here. And you're coming to us tonight from Florida. So thank you for doing so.
Eh, It's a real treat to be on, Leigh, and exactly what you said, to see the growth of the Camino podcasts as a genre, the Camino Cafe specifically, and Sacred Steps. So many people are interested in hearing storytelling about what's happening on the Camino, what's going on in Santiago de Compostela that you're bringing us, and I'm so grateful for it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's a real pleasure to be living here in this city and getting to do some different things. And you and I share a lot in common when it comes to
Mm.
storytelling. So I hope we get some good stories from you, which I'm sure we will.
I'll do my best. Don't put me on the spot too much there.
Well, we're going to change chairs pretty soon. So, I got to be careful because you'll be dishing it back in about another month and a half, right?
That's true. So for all you Camino Cafe followers, you'll have to jump over to Sacred Steps because we're putting Leigh behind the mic and she's going to be answering the questions. So can't wait to see you later in our season 3 over on Sacred Steps.
Yeah, well, it's a privilege to be able to come on your show, and I'm looking forward to that. And so glad to have you here on my season 3, right? And so
Let's do it.
let's do it. I'm sure everybody's like, get to it. So here we go. Take me back to the Kevin
Mm,
before he ever knew about pilgrimages. Who were you?
yeah.
What were you doing?
So, I work in hospitality, so I work in hotels, and I grew up in scouting. I've always been a hiker and a backpacker, and um, I came to know of the Camino de Santiago maybe back in 2012 from the movie The Way. It inspired me to read um, the book Pilgrimage, and then after that, kind of the spark was lit, and my wife encouraged me to travel more and kind of lean into this a little bit and say, gosh, you feel so good about yourself when you go on these walks. I was walking the Appalachian Trail and the Florida National Trail. Maybe it's time to do the Camino. And so, you got to have that family support. I have a great wife and a great son, and my job said, yeah, take the time, go walk the Camino. And in 2019, I walked the Camino Portuguese as my very first Camino.
Okay. Wow. All right. So a little bit of time between seeing the way till you took that first step. And what made you select the Portuguese for your first walk?
The more I'm a researcher, right? So I'm the guy who's looking up. My wife gives me a hard time because I'm reading all the stats, all the reviews, all the details on everything. When we were adopting our son, I was trying to figure out which diaper was the best diaper and all these things. She's like, oh, there's my husband like researching the tensile strength of diapers, right? So I was really into understanding the Camino from a couple different levels, and the Santiago story of Padron and moving the relics to Santiago de Compostela was so fascinating to me. I think from a historical perspective, because at the time I was really coming into this from, the opportunity to trace the footsteps of people who've made the pilgrimage for thousands of years. And part of the allure for me, I think, was joining this brotherhood of generations in order to walk to Santiago de Compostela. So the opportunity to walk through Padron and be in some of those places I thought was too compelling to pass up. So for me, it was the Camino Portuguese.
Okay. So were you a pretty spiritual person prior to coming on pilgrimage?
I was a pretty spiritual person, but I think when it comes to organized religion, I was kind of lapsed but listening, right? So when I maybe about 2017, 2018, when I was doing more walks on the Florida National Trail and the Appalachian Trail, I found that being in touch with nature and moving from group hikes to more solo hikes really gave me a headspace to be more reflective and set me up. I think by the time I was walking the Camino, there were just too many coincidences for me to ignore. The bells were going off and the lights were flashing, that this was an opportunity to reconnect with my faith as well. So,
What coincidences?
well, I'll give you a perfect example, right? I grew up in a very small town on a river. And I can remember, going to church every Sunday. And as I was walking through, Villanova de Cerviero on the Minho, it was a Sunday morning and I was walking down the hill towards the river. Everybody's heading into the parish and going to church. And it was such a flashback to my own childhood. Anytime you live in a smaller town by the river, it seems like everything's on a hill, right? So you're walking downhill, and I was instantly like, yeah, gosh, sense of deja vu, the sense that you've been there in that place before. And I spent the whole day thinking about it. And then as I was walking out of town, I started walking with an older gentleman in his 80s. And at that time, I was thinking about how I used to, go to church with my great grandmother, and she was probably about that same age as this gentleman, and it was coincidence after coincidence that had me in Pilgrim's Mass at night and had me seeking out the opportunity to really dive back into my faith. And by the time I got to Santiago de Compostela, and Sandy Brown and I were talking about this because I had no idea, for all the research that my wife thinks I do, I had no idea that they had all these cobblestones throughout Portugal. So
And don't they ever?
yeah, so I mean, my feet were pretty beat up by the time. So I was, physically broken and spiritually just laid out. And I walked into the square in Santiago, and there was everything that I thought I had been walking for, right? There was my family to greet me, and there was my faith at the cathedral. And it was just a really, really great opportunity for me to reconnect spiritually on that first Camino.
Right. So I know you, of course, as a pilgrim, a podcast author, which we will get to all of that more.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit outside of that. Are you still in the hospitality industry in Florida right now?
Yeah, I am. I've been in hospitality marketing for the last 23 years with the same company. And so, when people see all those pretty pictures about, Florida beaches or getting in touch with Florida's nature, I'm working really hard to make sure people want to take a trip to Florida. So that's what I do for, as you said, when I'm not stumbling along trails and stumbling with words, I'm working in hospitality marketing for a resort company.
Oh, okay. Wow, you are one busy guy.
I think of myself as a husband and a father, and everything else kind of whatever time's left, then that's what we'll pour into. So,
yeah. Now, I had heard at one time that you had quite a weight loss and maybe some changes in health. And so let's kind of switch to, did those things started happening before you went on your first pilgrimage, or did those happen after your first one?
I don't know. My life's a bit of a yo-yo there. So, if you need somebody to gain weight, I'm your guy. If you need somebody to lose weight, I'm your guy. Exactly. So, over the last year or so, I really wanted to, there'd been some things in our family health. My father and I dropped like 40 pounds in 3 or 4 months. So clearly I had a little weight that I could easily lose, and I did so. So in 2021, I dropped some weight as I was actually, it did some of my pilgrimage walks played a part because I had been walking along the California missions, along the coast of the Pacific coast in the United States. And I had just been to, or I was actually walking London to Canterbury, and then starting the Via Francigena, Canterbury towards Dover. And yeah, those walks definitely help lose some weight. So, you're out there, and especially if you're overweight, and I was clearly 20 or 30 pounds over my target weight, and so I was ready to get that off my knees, and so that definitely helped.
Yeah, somebody said to me once, you can walk for diet, divinity, or because of divorce. The three
Yeah,
D.
there you go, the 3Ds. Yeah, that's great. But I'm also I don't know about you, but I have certain things that I seek out when I'm on my walks and stuff. So my favorite thing to eat in when I'm on the Camino is a bacon bocadilla. Right, I want that bacon sandwich, that crusty bread, that back bacon, if for those who may not be familiar with it. But then what I found out is, I've been in different places. I've been in the UK, England, and Scotland. This past summer, I was walking through Italy, and I started to find out that the bacon bocadilla is like a player everywhere I go. So as I'm walking, I'm seeking it out, and I'm like, okay, for breakfast, we're going to find a cafe. We're going to have bacon buddy in the UK or wherever I might be. And, I don't drink coffee, so it always turns up I need a little caffeine, so it'll be like a Coke Zero or a Coke Light, Diet Coke, something like that. So
That's my drink of choice as well. You're making
there you
me
go. Everybody's got to pick their poison, and for me, it was the bacon bocadilla.
I understand. Well, I just had breakfast yesterday with a good Pilgrim friend that I walked with this past fall, and for breakfast, he got the bacon bocadilla. And I
Oh,
thought to myself, is he not sick of it yet? Like he could get anything in Santiago, but he still wanted that bacon bocadilla. So I
yeah,
understand.
and I mean for the U.S. audience, right? We don't have. It's very difficult to find back bacon in the United States. So I think for Christmas, my wife ordered me some back bacon from the UK, and so for the week after Christmas holiday, we were like, "Hey, we're having bacon buddies this morning." So my son and I were in heaven.
Cool. All right. So you told me you saw the way, and that kind of sparked some interest in the Camino. Did you have some guides or mentors during all this? I mean, I know you're good friends with Sandy, it seems. I'm always seeing little
Mm.
posts or whatever between the two of you. And I know he's been on your show and mine. And so I'm assuming he's one. Are there other mentors or guides or things that really inspire you about the Camino?
Yeah, I mean, Sandy Brown is a great man, and I feel lucky to call him a friend. He's been really supportive of me, and we come from a similar background. We both come from this kind of quasi, um, we call it Methodic Cathodist. We're both kind of like this Catholic Methodist crossover,
Yeah.
and we both have been passionate about walking California missions and trying to create some spaces in the United States where pilgrims can have a Camino type experience
Mhm.
domestically. And we both are really passionate about the Camino, so we had a lot of shared interest. Beyond that, though, there have been several people who have been very inspiring and supportive, and really, a bit of kind of mentors for me as well. Um, I've got like this, I don't know what we would call it. There's like a bromance or something going on with Kevin Considine. Kevin and I connected 3 or 4 years ago, and we always say like we're going to meet up, we're going to walk together, we're going to do this. He's a very fast walker.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I don't know that I'm ever going to walk with him, but I think I think we're bound to meet up again soon, maybe next spring. Um, and then my Camino tribe, when you're walking,
Yeah.
you sort of meet people who become their experience blends with yours, and they become part of your Camino family. So there's a Canadian couple, David and Judy, who, when I was doing my first Camino, I think they were doing their seventh, and their insight, experience, support, wisdom along my path was really fantastic. And then there's a lady that I'm just super in love with. We've never met,
Yeah.
but we talk and we chat, and we do all those things. Claude Tranchant
Oh,
in Australia, who is a pilgrim and an author, and has been on the podcast and is gonna, I hope, join us again in season 3 on the podcast, because she works in palliative care,
mhm.
and um, we were talking back and forth, and you know, her experience was very helpful to me and some things we were going through in my family. And so, we just had this deeper bond that kind of came from the Camino. And Claude is the type of person who gives herself completely to others, and someone that that's a characteristic that I wish that I could give more of myself the way she does. So she's such an inspiration for me, and I'm lucky. I consider her a distant Camino friend.
I love that. I haven't had the opportunity to meet her yet, so maybe you can.
I haven't either. I mean, how weird is that that we're so
Right?
connected, and over
Yeah.
the last couple of years, in particular, during the pandemic, like, we haven't been able to be as close to the people that we love or care about from the Camino as we wanted to. And I think you and I both share that we felt this great sense of loss
Yeah.
when pilgrimage and pilgrims were taken away from us.
Yeah, exactly. I love your usage of the word our experiences blended with one another with your pilgrim family.
Mm-hmm.
Let's chat a little bit about, I see a lot of folks coming in and there is an expectation of having a pilgrim family. So let's talk a little bit about how that happens and maybe your 2 cents on, what if it doesn't happen? What if it doesn't
Yeah.
happen for someone? And what's the reality of what a pilgrim family means to you? What's a typical day like? Because I think sometimes people think that maybe this Camino family, we're all walking together all day long. So I wonder if you can
Yeah.
kind of tell what your experience has been with that.
So my experience is the exact opposite, right? I think I meet people along the way who, and I think, their journey blends with mine is a really great way of saying it, because um, there are people who, in a lot of other circumstances, you wouldn't have the opportunity to spend time with, to get to know, or to have a brief conversation. You're maybe walking for 15 or 20 minutes, and their story inspires you to ask that next question. And for me, I I really want to make sure that I have my Camino, right? And I think that's important for people versus someone else's expectations of what it should be, because it changes for me every day, right? It's very fluid, very dynamic, because there are times where I try on my walks, I try to dedicate, every day is dedicated to a different relationship in my life. So I have a journal that my wife gave me years ago, and I kind of keep it during my walks. It's just this leather bound journal that I have carried with me on all of my walks. And so every day I kind of try to journal about the relationship that I'm thinking about. And I try to spend a little bit of time, not a
Mhm.
lot of time, maybe an hour, right? Just trying to be reflective as I'm walking about what it might be. And for my brother, I we're very close, but we don't spend enough time together. For my mother, she loves me unconditionally, and at times, I don't make enough time for her. And for my son, I we all want the best for our children, um, but I want him to choose what that means to him. And just really spending a little time being introspective. And during that time, people are walking by or walking next to you, or they say Buen Camino, and you say Buen Camino, and there's like this international. I don't know what it is. Maybe let's define it here. There's like this international wave, or like a passing nod or glance that says I want to be alone right now,
Yeah.
right? And there are other times where you're walking and you come upon someone, or you see someone in the cafe or the albergue, and you strike up a conversation and you want that conversation to move forward and continue. And, when I think about the people that I've come into, that I've met along the Camino, and I've come into, to get to know a little bit, that's how it's been. My Camino family is not, okay, it's 8 a.m., we're all walking from here to here today, and we're going to stop here for lunch together, and then we're going to dip our feet. No, it's usually most of the time that when I talk about my Camino family, it's people that I'm coming into contact with sometimes every day or two, and we walk together for an hour, and then our paths separate for a little while, and they just come back together as if they're meant to be. And I think, as a more spiritual person, I think God puts people in our lives for a reason, and I'm willing to trust what that might be. So if it's an hour, a day, a week, whatever it may be, I'm try to be grateful for it and see what opportunities there are for me to lean into their life, to have them lean into mine, and to kind of just have that relationship be whatever it may be, whatever it's destined to be. So I don't think of my Camino tribe as like a group I'm traveling with. I know a lot of people like to travel in a group, and that is awesome. Like, I want that for you. If that's the experience you're looking for, yes. But for me, because I know that I need that solo time every day, or that solo time is important to me every day, I'm not always a group guy. So, and I think both are the right answer.
Yeah, same for me. And I do want to dispel for folks out there that to have a Camino family doesn't mean that you're walking in a group. It's much,
right.
My experience has been much like yours. So I just want to make sure people don't feel like, oh, I'm feeling like a loser because I didn't make all these lifelong friends and all these things. And, I was speaking with someone the other night who's quite an experienced veteran pilgrim. And he said to me, one of the things you learn to do during pilgrimage is say goodbye, because we say goodbye to so many people.
Oh, Leigh, yeah, I haven't put it in that perspective. That's brilliant.
Right. There's a real learning there. And so I wonder, when you look back over days that you were walking, when, was there ever a person where you were like, you had to get going, that you had to say goodbye maybe before you really thought that you would have to, or maybe never saw them again? I mean, there've been times when I was like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. And, because I'd seen them every day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I can remember there was a lady, Daniela, Brazilian pilgrim, and she had knee pain and maybe a little bit of a hip injury, and we I slowed down and walked with her for a little bit, and she was a grandmother, and she was telling me these stories of her grandchildren, and there was so much love in her storytelling. And I love stories. I love listening to people talk about their lives and their loves. And so we got to, I don't quite recall where we were, and I don't know that it was important, but just for context, we came to a smallish town, and she was going to stop for the day, and I was going on, and I never saw her again. And I don't know, she made it to Santiago de Compostela. I don't know if she felt like her Camino ended at the right time. And I've never, I didn't make an effort to, it wasn't like, hey, give me your WhatsApp or anything like that. But she was someone who I think I was looking forward to, bumping into in Santiago or seeing again along the Camino, and it never happened. And there have been times where there are people who you bump into that you think, oh, I'm never going to see them again, and that's okay right now because we didn't bond. And
there was again.
Yeah, and I mean there might be, and some of these things are universal, but sometimes I've had ladies on the podcast and they're like, I'm really glad I never bumped into that guy again. And, but I think it's a bit universal. I was walking through Italy this summer, and there was a gentleman, he was an Italian pilgrim. We were walking to Rome St. Peter's Basilica, and I bumped into him. There aren't a lot of pilgrims that do the Via Francigena in total, right? There are a lot more that do it in Italy, but it's nothing like Spain. So you might see a few dozen pilgrims in the course of the day. So I bumped into him around Bolsena in Lazio, and he seemed like a grumpy man at the time, to be honest. And he probably just didn't want some American, trying to chat him up. Maybe he needed a little space. And I saw him again days later. I can't remember exactly how many, 4 or 5 days later. But we were walking into Rome, and he was, he gave me like this big hug, and he's like, "I'm so glad we saw each other again." And I was like, "Piero, let's get some coffee." And I asked him like, "Hey, how's it been going?" He said he had a really hard pilgrimage, but he was really sad to see it end. And as he had gotten towards the end, he had been very negative, but now he wanted to be joyful. And I thought, that is fantastic for you, that to be joyful at the end of your pilgrimage, because often we think that something is ending and we're losing something in our lives. And here was this man who, was reminding me that I need to be joyful. And it was a man who I hadn't been looking forward to seeing. And so I'm glad I had that experience.
Yeah, so true. So many people don't end in a joyful way because they're so sad that it's ending, right? And they're having to return to whatever they call that life back home, real life or whatever.
Yeah. And, Anne Bourne said something to me, and I really hope that I can remember it. I don't have a lot of tattoos, but I might get this one as a tattoo, and so I can remember it. Put it on a rubber band, maybe. I don't know. But she said a lady said to her at a church, she had unlocked the church for Anne during one of her Advent Caminos, and the lady said to her, I hope you arrive in peace. And Anne said that was so powerful to her. If you can imagine all the things that you've been walking with, walking for, walking towards, and to arrive in peace, where those things are settled in your heart and your mind, just seems like it's such a powerful expression. So simple, but so powerful.
So true, because I think sometimes you arrive without peace, and they were expecting peace. They were expecting that things would have been resolved, or, a final letting go, a final healing. And so sometimes arriving in peace is not as easy as it seems.
Well, just think of the little things that we assign certain values to, right? Like, so I know pilgrims who've lost some of their kit. They've lost what have you, their stick, or they've lost this or the other. And, they're kind of upset or mad at themselves for having misplaced it. I know people who are, there are a lot of pilgrims who walk and maybe push themselves too hard, and they've got a strain or blisters or a stress fracture, an injury of some kind. And it's hard physically to arrive in peace. It's hard mentally to arrive in peace. It's hard spiritually to arrive in peace. But if you can have that as a goal, what a great Camino that would be.
Yeah, right. Just arrive in peace. Peace in every step, right? Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about, what was your most challenging day on any of your pilgrimages? It could be a Camino, it could be one of the others you've done, but just describe a situation for us where Kevin was really tested, whether it be emotionally or physically.
Yeah. I did a long solo podcast last season because I had to tell a story about my own failure, falling apart, literally falling down and trying to pick myself back up. And it happened in the UK as I was doing the Pilgrim's Way. So that walk I had done from London to Canterbury. And there was a section of it. And if you haven't walked in the UK, first of all, the British Pilgrimage Trust, Andy Bull's book, Pilgrim Pathways, there are some incredible walks. We don't talk about English Caminos because of the English Reformation, but there are just some incredibly powerful walks in the UK. And I don't want to talk about those too much right now, but I just want to tell you about this day. But because they are not walked much, there are very few pilgrims. And I think when I did London to Canterbury, I think I met 3 pilgrims over the course of that walk.
How many
And
days is that?
what's that?
How many days is London to Canterbury? About.
I think it was about 5+ days or 6 days. You know, it was, but they were solitary, very solitary days. Yeah.
3 pilgrims that entire time.
The entire time. Yeah. I saw a couple bike riders. That was awesome. I saw like
They just go right by
a
you.
couple people on horseback, but yeah. And again, I don't want to get, it's so different walking in England, and it's so rewarding, especially if you are looking for, that quiet space. And walking in England was important to me. And so I was doing this day, and the other difficulty is that the infrastructure is vastly different from the Camino. So you're walking to inns and pubs, and they're not designed for pilgrims. So you've got to walk quite a ways in between towns, villages, sometimes longer than you would intend to. And once you get into them, you have to navigate your way to these inns and pubs where everybody is just living their active lives. And so this was a rather long day, and I was tired. It was maybe day 4 or 5, and for whatever reason, I really didn't feel like I had my legs. And it had gotten hot, and it had rained like it happens to do in England. And I was pretty just done with it all that day. I was like, I'm ready to get in. I want to get some food. I want to get a rest. I want to take a shower. And so I was looking at my route, and I saw that there was like an opportunity to kind of cut the corner, if you will, trim some mileage here. I was going to take a shortcut. And it wasn't a marked shortcut or anything like that, but I saw my GPS, and I know enough about maps that I felt like I could navigate it. And so I'm on my way. I'm making this detour, and I come upon this one little stretch that's about a half mile where I need to be roadside on a 2-lane road. And it's about 5:30 in the afternoon. And it might have been a Friday, but I think every car in Kent was on that road at about 80 kilometers an hour or something. They were just, there's no shoulder, no sidewalk, no anything. So I'm sort of ducking in and off this road. And about 5 minutes into this, I'm like, this is a terrible idea. Why did you do this? So I'm not enjoying the highway, or this 2-lane road. And eventually I step off, and I miss the step off, and I end up kind of face down, with my backpack on my back in this ditch of nettles. And I was not familiar with nettles, but I became intimately familiar with stinging nettles during this fall. And I just let it out. I mean, I just was angry and yelling, and, brought myself to tears. I was so mad. And I sat there for a couple seconds, and, the cars are kind of slowing down and just sort of waving to make sure you're alive or whatever. And I get out my little GPS, and I say, I got to get off this road. So I see there's like a footpath up ahead. And so I know I can get off this road, take this footpath, and that'll get me back to the actual Pilgrim's Way. And I didn't pay much attention to it. So I said, okay, I'm doing this. And so I get to the footpath, and it just starts to rain, and, a proper good English rain, the kind of rain that the English people would say, oh, that was a good rain. not like these little rains where, you're in America and the streets are flooded, but like an English rain where
Yeah.
they take notice. And this footpath, I now realize as I arrive, straight uphill. And I mean straight uphill. And I went back and looked at the incline, and it wasn't that much distance, right?
Yeah.
But it was like 900 feet gain in like a half mile. And it's one of those trigonometry problems, right? Where you got to figure out the slope, and it was way more than I thought it was. And it's mud. And I'm trying to make my way up this mud trail with the rain going, and still kind of feeling all these little stinging nettles on my face and my hands and my arms. And I'm just trying to use my poles to get up. I was so mad at myself because, I had made bad decisions and I knew better. And I got to the top of the hill, and the only thing I knew to do at that time was to talk about it. And so I got out my phone and I just did a voice memo. And when I listened back to that voice memo,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm proud of myself and embarrassed at the same time, because in all of my walks, that was probably my lowest low. And at the end of it all, I say something to the effect of, if I can just make it to the end tonight, I know I can be a better me tomorrow. And I'm super proud of that perspective, but that was a really tough day because I just made a number of mistakes in a row because I was tired and I was alone, and I wanted to just get to the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I talk about that in that podcast, and that really influenced that walk quite a bit, because that was probably an hour and a half of the whole 2 weeks I was in the UK. But I hadn't felt that kind of low before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really helped me put a lot of things in perspective, including that day, because in the end, I got a little hurt. I got a little bruised ego. I got a little wet. I got a lot exhausted. But it got me to that headspace
Mm-hmm.
where nothing else could touch me, right? Like nothing else could faze me because I had already hit the bottom. And so that really helped me on the rest of that walk, as I went on to Canterbury and Dover, and then up in Northumberland. I walked the St. Cuthbert's Way to Holy Island, and having that really bad day made every other day really fantastic.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So is this something you normally do? Is it leave your?
No, I normally don't fall down.
Well, I would hope not fall down. But what about these voice memos?
No, I don't do voice memos. No.
What made you think to do this rather than, say, calling your wife or calling a friend?
Yeah, I was probably too embarrassed. And especially on my solo walks, I try not to, trouble my wife with something that might alarm her. Because whether it's my physical health or my mental health, I don't want her to be concerned if I'm, 6 time zones away or whatever. And, I've been, I'm usually pretty physically tough and mentally tough. And so, I didn't want to alarm or upset her. And, yeah, I don't know. When I first started walking, right, my wife gave me that journal and she wrote in the front of it, write it all down, every single thing. And because it was raining, I knew I couldn't take out that journal. So maybe that's what inspired me to do that voice memo. But listening back to a voice memo, which I don't think I've ever done since. I mean, I've recorded some episodes like the podcast, like when you're talking to people on the street, Camino Cafe style.
Right.
But I don't think I've ever done a voice memo before that, and I'm not sure I've ever done one since. But yeah, that was it was just an unusual circumstance that I found myself in.
Yeah. Well, I really like it. And the reason I was asking about it is I think it's a great tip for folks. If you're by yourself and something kind
Yeah.
of doesn't go so well and you really feel like you got to talk about it and no one's passed you in a while,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe something you don't really want to share, because I find a lot of healing actually in hearing myself tell my own story. And that's why I wondered when you went back and listened to it that, it's in your own voice.
Yeah.
It's you telling yourself, what's going on, and you can kind of hear the emotion in your voice. And
it was really painful to listen back to, Leigh. And so when I, back in season 2, I talked about my UK pilgrimages, because I really think those are great opportunities for Camino pilgrims who are looking for something different. But I took time to talk about that day and that experience. And even listening back to that podcast is hard because I'm telling the story,
yeah,
and I'm crying on the podcast,
yeah,
and it's raw, right? And it's a very real retelling of that story. And there are a lot of good things that happen, right? Because there are bacon buddies along the way, but that story, people have emailed me about it, and they to your point, everybody has bad days, and I think sharing them is helpful.
I absolutely agree. I think sometimes we do a disservice when we act like every day is like unicorn and you know everything's just happy, happy, happy. That's not true. Not every day is
Yeah.
like that, just like in your life, nor is every hour of your walk, right? There can be 1 hour that's good and 1 hour it's not so good, but
Well,
doesn't
and
define.
I think it's part of the interesting on perspective too, right? So if you can be in the same space twice and not have the same experience. A lot of it is what's going on in your life, what's going on around you, and the things that you have control of, and the things that are out of your control. And so, perspective is important. And I think, everyone must realize that there are wonderful moments of personal highs on the Camino, and there are personal lows, and everyone is going through them. And so, if you get the opportunity to embrace someone in their lows, you know, odds are they'll be there for you as well.
Yes, great advice. Let's shift gears a little bit
Yeah,
because
let's shift gears. No more falling down.
no more falling down. So we got about 10 minutes
Okay.
here. I want to make sure that we talk about uh, the books that you have written.
Mm.
And, you started the podcast like I did during COVID, but you also wrote a book after that first Camino, right? And so it was a journal. And I just wonder if you can kind of take us through how this book idea happened and how it's developed into being, I'm hearing not 2, but 3 books. Is that is that the case?
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So, the books are like my life, a work in progress, right? So that's one of the ways that I kind of have started to work through it. I never set out to write a book. My wife would tell you I'm not an avid reader. Books are, I like books, but I don't try to find a bookstore in every town like some people do. During COVID, I felt out of touch with my Pilgrim family, and I felt that my planned pilgrimages, maybe this isn't the right way to express it, but I hope your audience will give me some latitude. But I felt like so much was taken away from us during the pandemic. and I missed my Camino family. And so I started the podcast for that very reason, because I wanted to talk to pilgrims and I wanted to talk to authors because they're great storytellers and they've thought through, the entirety of their experiences. And so that's why I started the podcast. I always intended, after the Camino, my first Camino, I sat down and I did my little research, and I thought about the walks that I wanted to do beyond the Camino.
Yeah.
And there were a number of them that were very, very interesting to me. And so Sacred Steps is really the story of those walks. And it's this confluence of history and faith that inspired me to make these walks. To join the footpaths of centuries and millennium of that pilgrims have walked was so inspiring to me, just as a connection to mankind.
Yeah.
And a connection to the history of the people and the places. But as I was growing in my own spiritual faith journey, there were these wonderful opportunities to explore my own faith. And so Sacred Steps, A Pilgrimage Journal, is my first book. It's in final edit right now, and it'll be available, I'm saying the first quarter of 2023, but it might be out before then. So you'll have to let the audience know if it comes out a little early. In the course of the pandemic, in the course of my walks, in the course of my experiences on the podcast, I've begun writing a fictional book based on true stories, entitled The Pilgrim's Table,
Nice.
which is set in an albergue in Finnis, Terre, and it's the story of 5 pilgrims that come together at the end of their Camino journey, and the stories that they share, the things that they find in common, and the things that their albergue host learns about themselves. So the Pilgrim's Table will be out probably for around Easter 2023, and I'm super proud of that book. So both books have websites, sacredstepsbook.com, thepilgrimstable.com. And
I'll have links to all of that in the show notes,
hey,
everyone. So we need to
that's
remember.
fantastic. Yeah, and we'll send everybody, if they want to sign up, we'll send them a preview and
Okay.
a reminder when it comes out. So,
Cool.
the people write these Camino books, and a lot of times it's, I did this and I went here. And those books are fantastic travel logs for me. Like, I can read them and I can see, that I want to be in that space, right? I want to go there. And I'll know what to expect as I'm walking that walk. These are a little different, I think, because the Pilgrim's Table in particular, kind of takes a look at the collective power of pilgrimage and the shared experiences that kind of connect our Camino families. And Sacred Steps is a little bit different because it dives into the history of some of these places that you find along the way. And so I'm really proud of both of them, and I can't wait to get feedback as they're available.
Oh, me too. I can't wait to see them and read them. I'm always looking for books that have a clever way in telling, kind of creating a clever framework and how they're going to share that Camino story. So it sounds like you have found 2 ways to do so. So
Yeah, well, you get to pay homage to people as well. So, like in the Pilgrim's Table, you got to come up with names for your characters, right? And
yeah.
so, I don't know if Leigh is available as a name, but I'm just saying, like, as you go through, you find all these things where you pay homage to some of the people that you've met along the way. And so I get to play with that a little bit too, which reminds me very much of people I love.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, Kevin, we're pilgrims, we're podcasters. I haven't yet added author to my titles, but I hope
We're
to.
waiting, Leigh. We're waiting.
I got some let me tell you. But you and I could talk forever in a day, but I know everybody only has so much time. Most people are listening to us probably while they're doing their training walk or they're driving in the car. So I want to be cognizant of that. So I just want to end this with, I'm fascinated by you, Kevin, because you have really walked so many different pilgrimages, and you've been a busy guy the
Yeah.
last couple of years. And I'm just curious, if I had met you prior to all of this, how's this Kevin, the one that's in front of me right now? How is he different than the guy I would have met years ago?
I I think the pilgrimage walks that I've made have made me a better version of myself. I've always been someone who's very sympathetic to others, but I think I'm more compassionate to them now. I've always been someone who loves travel, but I think my lens has given me so much of a greater appreciation of what the the places I'm visiting mean to the people who call them home. I've always, my wife and I have been together 28 years. I've always missed my wife when we're not together. But she has been so supportive of what I have wanted and sometimes needed to do in these walks, and it's just given me such great insight to what it means to love someone and to give them the space to grow. And they're all lessons that I wish I knew, 20 years ago. There's an old Chinese expression, right? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today. And I think there are regrets that we have, the things we didn't do sooner. But if I've learned anything, I hope it's that you don't have to regret them forever. You can do them right now.
Yes. Oh, that's a perfect way to end this. I'm so glad that we've had this chance to get to know you, the guy behind the podcast, the guy behind the books, the guy behind all the walks that we're hearing about. So thank you for sharing so vulnerably and for just coming and telling your stories.
Well, thanks so much, Leigh, and thanks to everybody for following the podcast. I would just say it means so much to Leigh and to myself to get your feedback. So, if you love the show, drop a comment, share it with a friend. Somebody's getting ready to walk the Camino, text them one of the podcast episodes, so they can grow in our family. And I appreciate you having me on, Leigh. I guess, be well and stay safe, and buen Camino.
Yeah, same to you, One Camino. And stay on, Kevin, because we're going to play 20 questions, which everybody will be able to find on my YouTube channel, the Camino Cafe YouTube channel. And during that, we will be talking about some other things we haven't talked about here. So if you enjoyed listening to this and you want to hear more from Kevin, some tips as well as some fun things, make sure you tune in. And whenever I listen to anyone's podcast, I always race home to match a face to the voice. So there's your chance to get to see him, as well as the behind the scenes video footage of today. You can also access that on my YouTube channel. So, hey, look, everyone, I think you're hearing some great stories from Kevin. So I hope this inspires you to book your ticket and to start planning your next walk, wherever that may be in the world. And if it is in Spain, I hope to meet you at the arrival when you come to Santiago. So buen camino, everyone. Until next time.